Fishburne's joining us, or Commissioner Kaiser is joining us online. I don't know about Commissioner Fishburne.
Ask Daniel. I asked you about the agenda.
Oh, yeah, we didn't.
I meant to ask how he did on the
Staff have
marathons
proposals
this
for
month.
the agenda.
Oh,
when we
you
get
did
to
that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just to move.
Was it
Oh, terrific. Okay. I think we're ready to go. Okay. Welcome to the Wednesday, May 21st, 2025 meeting of the Thurston County Planning Commission. The Thurston County Planning Commission is a resident advisory committee to the Board of County Commissioners on land use planning matters such as the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance amendments. Planning Commission actions are in the form of recommendations to the county commissioners, who are the final decision makers. All Planning Commission meetings are open to the public. Community members are welcome to observe all Planning Commission briefings and work sessions. We'll start the meeting with introductions. Well,
My name's Eric Casino. I live in the Lacey UGA and I serve the planning commission at large.
Scott Nelson, District 4.
Daniel Baumbarker. I both live in and serve District 1.
Kevin Pestinger, District 5.
Bartlett, District 5. I live in Tumwater.
and I am, oh, you want to go online? We have at least one commissioner online.
Hi, I'm Sandy Kaiser, representing District 3.
And I am Joel Hanson, also representing District 3.
I believe Evan needs to be promoted to a,
Commissioner Yvonne Miller.
needs to be
yeah.
promoted to a speaker.
Just for clarity, we do have a newly appointed planning commissioner.
Okay,
Yvonne Miller.
okay. Do we have to
She's a participant.
do anything? Okay, perfect. Yvonne, welcome. And if you'd care to introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Yvonne Miller and I work at Mountain View Elementary. I'm not exactly sure which district. Right.
You
Say
serve
that-
District 1, I think.
Oh, District 1. Yes, you're right.
You don't have the handy little placard in front of you to cheat with yet.
And no, not yet.
Well, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay. First on our agenda are meeting minutes from last meeting. Everybody had a chance to review the meeting minutes? Are there any changes?
Are we talking about the May 7th meeting?
Yes. Motion to approve?
I moved.
So moved, okay, and seconded. Any further discussion?
We still need to do the agenda.
Oh, we need to adopt the agenda, sorry, I jumped down to. Okay, we have an agenda and I understand that there may be an amendment.
Yeah, if the commission so chooses, I anticipate we'll be able to walk through this code package pretty quickly.
Okay.
And so if you all would like to move it ahead of the comp plan, you would have more time to discuss to continue the comprehensive plan discussions following this, but it's up to your discretion. Just pitching the idea.
So moved.
So moved, and is there a second? Moved and seconded to amend the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Can I ask about how long we anticipate that to cut into the agenda?
It's already on.
It's already on the agenda.
It was just moving it earlier.
Swapping a few things.
Okay, sorry.
Just to be extra safe, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Very good. Okay. Then next we have approval of meeting minutes. I was looking at the May 7th meeting minutes. Preparation for this meeting, but I forgot we have not approved the meeting minutes from the previous two meetings.
Those were from public hearings.
Oh, the public hearings, that's right.
Move to approve the meeting minutes from April 23rd, April 26th, and May 7th.
Second,
Second that.
any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. So continued business, and we want to start with the work session for permit review.
Public communication.
Oh, the road. I'm out of sorts. Okay.
In a hurry.
Yeah, right. Public communication. Is there anybody signed up to speak tonight? List.
Proper, it is in order.
Okay, perfect. The Thurston County Planning Commission welcomes comments from the public at all meetings. Thank you, Derek. General guidelines for public comment. Please introduce yourself, including the address you reside in the county. Please address the planning commission, not the audience or staff. The planning commission may not respond to public comments. Speakers are limited to a total of 3 minutes. The timer will show on one of the video screens, help keep track of time. Meeting attendees cannot donate their speaking time to another person. No comments that are lewd and offensive, inflammatory, hateful, defamatory, or discriminatory in nature. No comments that are commercial in nature. All materials provided to the county may be subject to the release pursuant to the Public Records Act. Remarks on projects that have already had a planning commission meeting or hearing will be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration. And first on the list is Tom Crawford.
Good evening, commissioners, and once again, thank you for your work and your dedication to public service in our communities. Thinking about your previous meeting on May 7th and some of your discussion and comments on TCAT's Thurston. Oh, I live in unincorporated Thurston County in the Carlin Beach area. So, and I, as you know, I'm representing Thurston Climate Action. So as we thought about your comments and concerns, we've developed a little bit different approach to achieve some of the same goals and ends that we originally had in our previous comments. And so I'd like to propose some alternate approaches to our recommendation for changes to the current draft of the county's comprehensive plan, focusing on the climate change chapter or section of the implementation plan. So I'm going to go through a few of these, and I probably won't have time to cover them all. And so others may cover some of them as well. So I'd like to start. I'm going to skip over some of the items in the buildings and housing area. So I'm going to go to action, let's see, action T1.9, which is permitting ADUs. We suggest replicating the language from your goal H2A3, which is permitting ADUs in residential zones in rural and UGA areas, and replicating that as an action in the implementation plan. The reason for that is we think it's important to have these very critical items reflected in the implementation plan, because that will provide, we think, more direct and better guidance to staff as they go through and complete this work. Then in action T2.2, which is increased transportation efficiency, recommend that though some of the specifics in this action are not applicable to unincorporated county, your goals CL2B4 and CL2B5 contain language that is very useful and should be replicated as one or two implementation actions in the climate section of the implementation plan. And by the way, I've sent these to a couple of commissioners that I had email addresses for, and to a couple of staff that where I could find email addresses. So you may or may not have those readily available, but they're available. I sent those to you. For TCMP action P2-17, government agencies increase telework and staggered work days. We suggest adding language to IPCL 53 to encourage county workers to telework and stagger work days when appropriate. For TCMP action T5.13, financial support for telecommuting infrastructure. Again, we suggest replicating CL2.B.4 increasing adoption of low carbon transportation options in the climate section of the implementation plan. And then adding to that telecommuting infrastructure support for that item. We suggest for TCMP action T3.1, EV charging spots in large buildings, modifying IPCL 19, which is about EV infrastructure requirements, as follows. Remove the phrase assess opportunities to, and just make it more direct. Hey, no, we're gonna build on this previous work and we're gonna do some stuff, right? So we think perhaps assess opportunities is not necessary. And secondly, add a bulleted item that reads, require a percentage of parking spots in large residential or commercial buildings for EV charging.
Thank you, Tom.
So
But you've
I'm
provided,
sorry, I've gone over time.
no, that's okay. But you've provided all of these in writing as well?
I sent you a copy
Okay,
and I know you've had a busy afternoon and you probably haven't seen it, but.
I haven't seen it yet,
Just,
but,
just a couple hours ago, I sent a copy
okay,
to you and Commissioner Bartlett and to a couple of staff members.
perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have that email pulled up if anyone wants to see it. I can pass my laptop around.
It's that chance to fence it. Send it to Tasha.
Yes.
Tasha, then you can print it.
Okay, we're ready for you.
Okay, all right. I didn't want to get to, my
Thank
name's
you.
Betsy Norton. I live in Olympia. I'm speaking just on behalf of myself today. I support everything. I read Tom's thing, but I didn't have time to make any specific requests. So I support everything that he says. In addition, I would ask you to include in the climate implementation plan items, something about wildlife corridors and support for wildlife crossings over roads as a climate adaptation and resilience measure. Because that's really important. Provide tsunami route for the larger terrestrial wildlife. And regarding the SEPA process changes, I would really like to see from staff some information about the impact of removing the LCC from a decision-making position. Because my understanding is you appeal to a hearing examiner, the hearing examiner, then you can appeal to the BOCC, and at that point, then you can go up to Superior Court. You remove this particular node in that decision-making process. We have three concerns there. One is that when you remove the BOCC level, and people have to go straight to Superior Court, it'll make it so costly that it's going to present a financial barrier to people pursuing appeals. Secondly, we're concerned that the removing the BOCC limits the scope of considerations that they might apply to a SEPA appeal. Because a judge, once you go to the courts, they're only looking at what's codified in the law. And the problem is that the law always lags climate change, and it always lags the policies that the county might implement. And so leaving the BOCC in there allows them to put those considerations into the decision-making process. And then third, we're a little concerned that if you remove the BOCC out of the mix, that reduces their accountability for permit approval and the performance of the permitting process. And we think they should be fully accountable. So the kind of information that I'd like to see generated from the staff would be to look at the last 20 years, look at the appeals that have been gone through, see how far they go, proceed, see who wins those appeals and at what level those appeals are stopped. So you can predict what will happen if we remove BOCC from there and see if any of those sort of bigger ramifications occur. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else in the room like to provide comment? Is there anyone online that would like to provide comment? So please indicate so by in the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands raised online. Oh, okay, that closes the public comment portion of the meeting. And now we can go to work session number 2, permit review process annual update.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all.
Jump the gun.
I know. Well, just wanted to do a quick introduction before we dive in. Anna will be leading this presentation. I'll start with my name, Andrew Bond, with Thurston County CPED, in strategic regional planning. We're still name shopping, so bear with us. I have Anna Rodriguez, who will be leading this presentation, and our newest staff member who was hired in a hybrid position, both long range and current. So she has her finger on the pulse when it comes to the permits, and her name is Natalie Jacobs.
Oh, nice to meet you all. Awesome, yeah. Like Andrew said, Anna Rodriguez, for once, I'm actually here to talk to you about something that's not comp plan, so I'm very excited. This is work session number 2 for permit review process annual update. However, I recognize you all have not heard about this since July of last year, so there we go. So before jumping into the draft code package you all had, I'll give you a quick refresh on what this docket item is, and then we can dive into the different chunks of code and then also discuss next steps. So the permit review process annual update, it's docket item A31 on the official development code docket. And it's a placeholder for project issues, inconsistencies, or redundancies that we might identify in our application review or in other things. And so there are a handful of other like bucket items on the docket that allow us to address code, like the code clarifications and corrections. The new uses and related standards, we developed a couple buckets so that we would be able to update code in a quicker and more responsive fashion than having to wait for the next docket cycle. And so this code package actually does include the code clarifications and corrections in this package because there were relatively minor edits, and rather than belabor the point and have you all look at 2 different things, one that's long and one that's only 4 pages. I've taken that from Maya and included this in this package. So we've got general clerical edits, as well as appeals. I'll be able to touch on some of the things that Betsy brought up during her public comment. Codifying the permit review timelines as required by Senate Bill 5290, as well as adding in code language for adjusting the categorical exemptions for the State Environmental Policy Act, which is also known as SEPA. As I mentioned, code clarifications and corrections. This is item A13 on the official development code docket. It includes minor revisions to titles 17, 18, 20, and 25. And so these code changes are things that current planning notices there is a typo, there's an incorrect reference to a different section of code, or just some inconsistencies. Maybe in one section it says we do one thing, and in another section it says we do the opposite, and clearing that up so that our code is better and more clear and transparent to enhance our customer service experience as we're providing permits and helping out with the public. And so, like I said, there were only 4 pages of edits, so they've just been looped in with this and included in the rest of the package. This might also include things like adding a definition to eliminate some contradictions or some confusion and things. And so, for example, I didn't write it down, never mind. One of the things that Maya identified with current planning was to create a definition, I think it's in Title 18, that just gets at that eliminating confusion. You know, like we have uses, but if we don't have definitions, it kind of makes it wonky at the counter. And so that's really what this package item is, and it touches those 4 titles, as I mentioned. And so appeals, before starting this, I want to recognize and acknowledge that at the first work session, the Planning Commission did express not wanting to remove the board from the appeals process. And that will be something that I make sure to identify in the staff report and the recommendation letter that goes to the board. For the public and for the record, this is a board directed item. The board has requested to be removed from the appeals process so that they can participate in communications with the public and applicants and landowners in conversations about land use proposals. As it stands now, they can't really do that because it would be ex parte communications, since they are in that level of or chain of command as far as it goes for appeals. Yeah, so by no means am I trying to say I don't care about the planning commission's recommendation. I just want for the record, this was a board directed item, and so this code package does reflect that change. But the planning commission's concerns will be in my recommendation letter, as we move forward.
When the board directed to look at this or make this recommendation, did they do this in a work session on something else, or was this a specific item that they had a work session on? I tried to follow the work sessions. I don't remember them, and of course, I don't see them all. But where did they initially discuss this, and when did they come to that conclusion that they wanted to be removed?
So it was about 2 years ago where we've had these like kind of reoccurring land use appeals.
Yeah.
Where they either get remanded and then come back and it's a cycle. And so there were concerns, and I think part of it was Gary.
Yeah,
And reminiscing on the past with, as it relates to land use, the land use rezone proposal that cost us some money.
yeah,
That kind of, that ex parte communication that resulted in us losing a lawsuit because they weren't actually permitted to do so, has been kind of a focus, and he's brought that up many times, like he wishes he could speak. And so that kind of collective motion
mhm,
kind of just motioned us in the path. And then when we brought it forward as part of the permit review process update, that was one of the items that was identified.
just recently?
During the docket process.
Okay, during the
docket, yeah.
docketing process,
It's been a
okay, okay.
As part of the bucket, of the initial bucket.
Was this all done then on a 3-commissioner board and prior to the 5-commissioner board, or is the
They-
5-commissioner board actually
they-
thought about this any?
Yeah, the 5-commissioner board, I mean, I can't think of off the top of my head if they've discussed it in
Uh-huh,
total, but it was a request from the 3, but was decided on by the 5.
okay.
Commissioner Pestinger.
So we make recommendations, the board makes decisions. This is our recommendation. If they want to change it on their end, I think they have full authority to do that, but I don't think it changes our recommendation, and I move that we have language in here reflective of our position.
I would second that.
I would double down on that.
It's been moved and seconded that we would like our, not just the recommendation letter, but the,
I think we should add some findings after our vote to sharpen up our recommendation letter if this motion passes.
that's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, I think that's clear direction for staff.
And so what we will do is we'll create 2 versions. And that will just be, we'll have the one that was originally created, and then we'll have one with the appeals completely removed. And that will be that way to address.
I still have lots of concerns about this because I think, much like we've heard from the public today, that having a political solution to problems is very important. Otherwise, all land use and planning would just be a judicial act. And there wouldn't be any spot for a legislative act. And so I think taking the BOCC out of it is a huge mistake. I think that the political solution often is a very good solution and at least should be available to the public. Moreover, the idea that they can't discuss it if they are then going to have a quasi judicial judgment afterwards. Well, this doesn't change it because now you can talk to the BOCC, but they don't have any power to change it. So what's the use to talking to them then? So one way you can't talk to them, but they can at least rule on it, or you can't talk to them until you have your appeal. But now you can talk to them, but they don't have any way to effectuate it. So I think this whole idea of taking them out is a huge disservice. And I think that by allowing them to still look for a political solution with the BOCC, even if they don't get the answer they like there, they still are allowed to go to Superior Court. And so instead of this being 3 steps, it's still 4 steps. It doesn't change anything. So I would strongly encourage them not to remove themselves from this process.
I agree with everything Commissioner Casino just shared for all the reasons he stated. I also know this is going around the different jurisdictions, and has been for a couple of years. There's big debates about this in different cities. I have personally heard hearing commissioners come before jurisdictions like city councils and openly say to them, let me take the hard work away from you. I'll take all the responsibility and concern. You guys can make the easy decisions. I'll deal with the difficult stuff and you won't have to deal with any of the headaches from that. And I find that not a good solution to our way of operating and having, as Commissioner Casino mentioned, legislative process to it with elected officials.
Commissioner Bartlett.
Yeah, I agree that it's addressing a real problem. I think that there are better solutions to that real problem, and that's worth exploring. I am curious whether it's possible to have it be an individual basis, if like individuals can recuse themselves rather than the entire board. And then you could just designate someone to be siloed off from that decision-making process to be able to be a representative to speak to. I mean, obviously, you guys understand your jobs better than I do, but it just seems like there's better solutions.
I think the point there is if somebody does appeal it to the board still would have full authority to say, no, we agree with the hearings examiner.
Yeah.
Or they could even say, we're not gonna take this up, you're stuck with the hearings examiner unless you wanna take it to court.
Exactly.
Back to you, Anna.
Okay. Next up, codifying the SB 5290 timelines. So in 2023, the legislature adopted Senate Bill 5290, which amended 3670B RCW, amending the timelines to, I'm jumping ahead. That bullet isn't actually what I'm trying to say. Amending the Local Project Review Act in order to require permitting agencies to update their review timelines to ensure a more efficient permit review process. And so our code as it stands is not in alignment with state law. It has incorrect timelines. And so this is essentially just doing an overhaul of those administrative procedures sections in primarily in 2021, 2023, and 24 to change the timelines for the different permit types to reflect the requirements within 5290, including the different exemptions that 5290 outlines, as well as some of the habitat, those four.
Yeah. There are 4 exemptions that we wish to include, which we are permitted to include, that are not something that you can typically complete within 170 days, usually mineral based, or habitat that has a specific review period. That if they submit in December, they actually can't do the review until April, which would automatically meet them, cause us to be out of compliance. And so there will be certain exemptions for like specific reviews of habitat.
Thank you. And so, like I said, it's primarily in 20 through 24. We have this our code is redundant. If you have not delved into it much, it's truly a copy and paste in each of the different titles, but formatted slightly differently to reflect the formatting of each title. And so the language and the verbiage and the timelines are all the same across the titles. It's just that as our code stands right now, it is incredibly duplicative. In this update as well, I noticed that Title 18, which is our subdivisions code, includes administrative procedures that are actually more outdated than our existing administrative procedures because it's in a title that honestly doesn't make sense. And so I'm repealing it entirely to try and streamline our code a little bit more. I know that the current planners don't refer to Title 18 when they're looking for the timelines. They refer to either the zoning code or the different UGA titles. And so repealing that section within 18 and referencing, directing people to the more applicable sections of our code will hopefully eliminate some of these redundancies.
Mr. Pestier.
Chair, I'm a little just confused that type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 3 being longer than type 1 and 2 combined. Is there a reason for that?
There are both public notice and public hearing requirements for those, as well as like the types of permits that are type 3 are more exhaustive. So things like mines, things that require more exhaustive SEPA.
So
Okay.
type threes are hearing examiner based. So there's an official public hearing for the proposal, while type twos are SEPA based proposals. So it's an administrative review with an environmental aspect.
So there's no advantage, there's no overlap, there's no.
So
Things happening concurrently. that
So
would
there
speed
are.
that up.
yeah, so with type three permits, it could have an application that is a type one that's a type two, and could have a type three. And all of three will happen at the same time concurrently, and some are mostly contingent on the other. So if the hearing examiner says, yes, you can move forward with it, that will then cause the other applications to be able to be approved. And so it kind of, the more stringent applies in terms of timeline.
Okay, thank you.
And then lastly, SEPA categorical exemptions. And so in 2023 as well, the legislature adopted Senate Bill 5412, which expanded the infill development SEPA categorical exemptions. And so this piece, I'm honestly kind of excited for it. We've been talking a lot about comp plan and like how do we actually implement some of the things and the priorities the planning commission has had? And this is one tool that we can use to help address the housing crisis. And so it comes with feelings, and I recognize that SEPA is one tool that we have in our toolbox as planners, but there are still so many other tools that we use as far as conducting environmental review and ensuring that the developments and the proposals that we see are not causing adverse impacts to the environment. And so the categorical exemptions, essentially the legislature was like, we recognize that there's a housing crisis and we recognize that there are barriers to like getting permits approved, getting developments done, and SEPA can sometimes slow things down and add an additional cost, pretty significant additional costs. At the state level, there's currently some case law coming out that's going to require more EISs for non-project review, and EISs are incredibly expensive, and so they can be anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 just to do an environmental impact statement. And so that is one thing that could put back housing developments from actually moving forward at a more timely pace, a pace that would allow us to potentially put people in homes in the midst of this housing crisis. And so we're amending the exemptions as permitted by ecology and all the things, but I really want to emphasize that amending these thresholds does not eliminate environmental review altogether. We still have so many things that these developments and these proposals have to adhere to before they can happen. They have to adhere to our code, our development regulations. Critical areas ordinance, we have a pretty stringent critical areas ordinance, which does offer a lot of environmental protections that hopefully that might eliminate some of the pause people are having about changing the SEPA requirements. We also have building code. Public health has their sanitary code as far as things with septic and water and those considerations. All of these developments are still gonna have to adhere to our impervious surface coverage and those things and the different stormwater control measures within our drainage and design DDECM. DevRev will still look at things, and there is still public notice requirements. So one advantage to SEPA is that there is a public noticing requirement. You all have seen it. Every time we issue a determination, we have to send something to our newspaper of record. And so changing these thresholds to be 4 units in the UGA to 30 in the UGA, that's a big change, and to not have any public noticing would make me upset as a citizen and a resident of the area. And so the state law actually includes that there are public notice requirements for projects that meet these exemptions. So there's still a 60-day notice to tribes, to jurisdictions, and to the public as well. So there's still things that we have to do to make sure that people know these developments are happening. It just might be in a different way than how SEPA packages it up. Pause there for a second.
So we've been saying amending SEPA, but this looks like we're removing SEPA?
No. So on the second page of the code package I gave you, it's in 1709 of our code, section 55. We already have categorical exemptions. Ours are just incredibly low, especially compared to other jurisdictions. So this is one thing too, that the cities across the state, but especially the cities here in the county, are amending these as well. They don't have drafts out yet because we're ahead of everyone, as I'm sure you all are aware. But they're amending these too. They also have to address the housing crisis at hand. And so this not only allows us to do that, one, me pitching the housing piece, but it makes us a better jurisdictional partner because it would have us a little bit more in alignment with the cities. And so we've already had these exemptions, they were just low. And we also, this hasn't been touched truly since 1996. And so we didn't have any multifamily residential structures specified in this code at all. And that's something that we see a lot of in the UGAs. And so, like outside the urban growth area right now, 4 dwelling units is exempt from SEPA, but we're upping it to 20. Again, you still have to meet underlying density, you still have to meet the code, you still have to meet the development regulations. I think it's important to note with the code changes we make, and we ran into this with the Grand Mound housing discussion, is while the zoning may say you can have this, it doesn't always pencil out. So there are all of these different pieces of review, and so our code might say you can have 20 dwelling units, but just because you have a 5-acre parcel doesn't mean you actually are gonna be able to break ground on 20 units. This could just potentially be a mechanism to help if we wanted to pursue cluster subdivisions or things of that sort, to get things moving in that way. So page 2 of the code package of attachment A, if anyone online or any of y'all wanna look at it, that's mostly what we're referring to. So long-winded answer, not getting rid of it, just amending what we already had.
Are we really the first or have other counties tackled this yet? And if so, where are they coming in on this?
I've not done that research. I've really only been looking at Thurston County and basking in the glory of being ahead of the cities. The other, the 2024 comp plan folks, I know that 5412, didn't require you to get it done, in alignment because it was 2023 and then the 2024 comp plan adoption folks would have kind of been in a pickle. So they have to adopt it alongside the development regulations, which could happen after their 2024 adoption, or at the next comprehensive plan update. Realistically, I think those other jurisdictions are doing that. That's something that I can absolutely bring back. Should you so wish, I could look and see like Piercer.
I'm curious what other counties are doing, whether we're being
I
more
know,
aggressive or following the trend there, because a
Well,
5-fold
we-
increase seems like a lot to me.
so we are actually taking Snohomish County's exemptions, almost copy and paste. Abby Adams, senior planner and current planning, queen of all current planning and permitting, can't praise her enough, did an analysis a while back of all of the different jurisdictions, more so to show the ways in which we're behind or lagging and potentially making permitting review go a little bit slower. And all of the Thurston County cities as well are pretty behind. They've not updated theirs in a while. But we're following Snohomish County's lead on what we picked as decided to move forward with, just because numbers seems to make sense with the vision that
I will also add that a lot of the exemptions will apply in areas that have services.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna see significant development within the rural county.
It's mostly UGA.
Yeah, you'll see it where there's water and sewer availability, and you'll see multifamily and more like denser newer subdivisions popping up in either the UGAs around the cities or Grand Mound.
And also,
That's, I was going to ask, it sounds like that this really should be characterized as mostly impacting the UGAs, and it's mostly to prepare for matching with the cities that are in those UGAs, so I think that this just sounds like a good idea to me.
it's also worth noting too, that there are some minor land use and minor construction exemptions. Like these exemptions do not apply if there's a rezone involved. So, you know, you'll be seeing BLQ, things that you, like those kinds of rezones that you will be seeing, projects of that sort will not be exempt from SEPA. If it needs a license, if a license is needed for emissions to air or discharge to water, or if the proposal includes work wholly or partly on land. Those are 3 things that the state law specifies that you cannot be exempt from.
Oh, interesting. So this stuff for exemptions and even permit review timing was referencing laws from 2023, passed in 2023, and I'm not complaining you can't possibly be up on 2025, but there were some new laws that affect this that were passed just now. There was laws related to missing middle infill housing being available anywhere. There were laws passed related to all jurisdictions need to look at anything which impedes the construction of housing and try to reduce that. Would you say that this is in line with that?
I would, I mean, the infill exemptions are specific, like, and if you read all of the summaries and stuff from 2023, it is to get at missing middle. Because this infill would allow for a variety of housing types, depending on where the proposal is allocated to.
I can probably be supportive of the exemptions for UGAs, but going in an outside an urban growth area from 4 structures to 20, where is it in the outside of the UGAs that we have places for 20 houses to go into?
It's possible there won't be any land if they happen to acquire numerous parcels and actually begin to meet the density, or if we make changes to our.
But they would need services, right? You can't just put in 20 houses without septic.
Well, there might be a community system of some kind. Obviously, they would have to figure out those logistics. This is just one piece of the bigger puzzle. And I would say, like, the diagram on the presentation shows, while they may in theory by zoning be allowed to have 20, each of those potentially chips off 1, 2, or more because they need to be able to meet all of them to actually have a development. So this is just one piece that says, hey, you can have 20 units and not be subject to SEPA, but you still have to comply with every other aspect.
It just feels like this is flying in the face of what we just had a lot of discussions about, and accounting towards 5% growth and not 19% growth. And yet we said, we're not gonna hit 5%, it's gonna be over that no matter what, there's nothing we can do about it. And yet we're saying, let's increase exemptions.
On the flip side, I would say these exemptions allow for more of that development to be pushed to the UGAs. By exempting SEPA and the UGAs, anyone who could potentially decide to move to the rural area, that middle housing, that infill development in the UGAs could push us closer to that 5% because folks, there would actually be housing developed necessary in those areas, access to services, access to transportation, instead of in the rural area.
I guess that's what I'm saying is, should maybe we go ahead with these exemptions for the UGA, but not increase things for the outside of the UGA?
Let's split them apart and kind of take a thumbs up, thumbs down approach. How do people feel about section A for the changes in the urban growth areas? Yeah. So it would be going from 9 to 30 dwelling units, or multifamily residential structures up to 60 could be exempted from SEPA. Folks feeling that that's
I got a little over flat on that. So I guess positive.
Mr. Kaiser, looks like you're.
Thumbs up.
I think the straw poll is that we're comfortable with that recommendation. How do people feel about the second part of that?
Outside the
Recommendation
UGA.
B, outside the UGA, single family residential structures going from 4 to 20 units being exempted from SEPA, or multifamily residential structures of 25.
Also doubles landfill size, significantly increases, office, school, commercial, recreational service buildings, and, ups parking lot size.
CD and
Your thumbs
That-
down.
that- It doesn't change any of those. It changes whether or not they have to go through SEPA.
Right, right.
And I think that's a huge difference. I mean, you could still do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for the
maybe go for
clarification, that's
8,
important.
but 20 seems too high.
where are you at? Casino?
3 down.
In thinking of clusters, what number would you like to see? I think clusters are a good tool in our toolbox.
Oh, but clusters don't require big parking lots. No.
Yeah,
It-
none of
As
this
a
would actually
whole.
pencil.
But
if
if
you
they,
want the code to
currently,
pencil.
if they're at the clusters at 6 houses, it's gonna require a SEPA review. Which, one of the things we're supposed to be looking at is affordable housing. That's one of our goals of the comp plan, so.
It's moving from.
I said I could be comfortable with 6 or 8, I'm probably not comfortable with 20.
120.
I think personally, I think if that was more like 10, not 20, I would be more comfortable. 20 is a lot in a non-UGA rural area.
That's part of the problem, I think, though, is that kind of clustering just doesn't happen. We're just not seeing it happen at all. And if we would like to see that, which I'm not saying that we do, but we might, because if we are going to get 20 developments all in one area, that also means that you're gonna be setting aside 95 acres of land
Yeah.
because of clustering.
Which is going to
And-
happen.
Well, it might.
It might.
And and the whole idea of having 95 acres of land untouched with 5 acres that's being developed instead of having 25-acre mini estates scattering the countryside, I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
So if we are going to have development in the rural areas, I would prefer it to be clustered, and anything that we can do to encourage that, I would encourage doing that.
Could we
hold on.
exempt the
Yeah.
clusters only and leave the otherwise down? Because this isn't just impacting clustered housing, it's impacting schools, commercial buildings, and all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. We keep talking about these clustered things as being wonderful just because it reduces a footprint and because it sets aside some land and because it maybe changes the septic and sewage situation, but we still have talked about a lot of issues that are very concerning about dense development in the county. And number one is access to services and transportation, which also has environmental impacts. And I think there's a number of other factors. So we're saying we don't have a ton of them. I think going up to 8, maybe 10 is reasonable. I think 20 is just pushing it way too far and just saying, oh, we'll just open the doors wide open and hope something comes that perfectly fits what we want. Never mind, nothing negative happens in that space.
Mr. Bombard.
Well, how would you feel about a suggestion to 10 with a carve out for clustered housing?
Well, if we can carve out for clustered housing, then I'd even go smaller and carve out.
8 and clustered?
I'm gonna go to you and then Commissioner Kaiser has her hands up.
That was going to be my suggestion.
Okay, Commissioner Kaiser.
You, Chair. I'd actually like to see that 20 option as a rural person. I know lots of folks who live in multifamily situations and would certainly cluster if they had the opportunity and would carpool and would share transit into town. I think given our situation in the county with our incredible lack of housing, I think we need to be creative, and I don't think we should be closing the door on this kind of option.
I'm not sure if I could ask Commissioner Kaiser directly, if we carved out the 20 specifically for clustered housing, but kept threshold otherwise lower, would you find that objectionable?
No, I think that's a great way to go.
I agree.
In the interest of time tonight, I see we have another work session scheduled for this on June 4th. Do you think that you could prepare some options for us to?
I mean, yeah, it seems like really the only thing to discuss is just your recommendations. As far as changing the code itself is pretty minimal.
Can we do a temperature check on the 8 with the 20 for clustered housing
Yeah.
compromise?
Yeah. It's like that has a majority.
I'll be back.
Thank you. Okay.
Like to pay me out of this?
Oh, yeah.
Next on the amended agenda, we'll go to work session 34 on person 2045. Follow-up recommendations. And I believe we'll probably still be in the climate section. Great. And I'm happy to see that our climate program manager, is that- okay, is with us. Glad that you can make it. We really enjoyed your feedback at the last discussion, and so this is good that we can have it in real time.
No, I am glad to be here. I just want to thank all of the commissioners for your very close attention and diligence on everything related to the comp plan, but specifically on the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. Thank you to the community members for your hard work on helping us revise and integrate these two plans. I am supportive of the approach as it's moving forward. I think that the close, prioritization of action by action makes sense rather than appending the entire TCMP because for a few reasons. The most imminent in my mind is that we are going to start on an administrative update to the TCMP this year. And so there will be changes coming very soon. So it's a living document. So I think it makes sense more to weave them in as you all are doing. So I'm here to contribute as we go through. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. If I may, before we kick off officially, into, I think we should call this the catwalk. Makes sense.
The cat walk?
Something like that.
Catwalk.
So we've been, we heard from the public and, we've been kind of talking as staff. We've been working with Rebecca. One of the things that we noticed and, I think we're gonna recommend, Rebecca has been gracious enough to write us some language about the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, specifically that we could incorporate into the narrative. One of the other things that we thought is we'd want to be able to, and actually we just got it from the city of Olympia, what they're doing in their climate plan. They're also referencing the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, and then they're linking out to the plan or wherever the plan is housed, so that to Rebecca's point, as it gets updated, it references the most recent version. So that's one of the things that we've been working on, and we'd suggest as a path forward for incorporating the climate mitigation plan alongside the specific kind of item by item work through to decide what goes in. So
When that language is ready, I'm sure we'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. for that.
Probably it's ready now.
One quick question, do we have a sense of where the other jurisdictional partners are in their process, Lacey and Tumwater as the other two signers to the TCMP?
I really don't know off the top of my head. Rebecca may have a sense of kind of where folks are.
I interact with my climate counterparts in each of the cities on the initiatives that we're advancing. But we have all updated our community work group on the comp plan elements. So I have very high level understanding. Based on what they've said, I don't believe any of them are bringing the entire TCMP in. They're doing a similar process through community engagement and integrating the statewide guidance and prioritizing certain actions in the TCMP. I don't know that any of them are doing an implementation plan as we are.
Not that we know.
Yeah, so I think it's a little different when they're talking at the policy level.
That does also mean that we can't assume that the cities are going to take, when we hand things off to the cities, we can't assume that they're actually taking us up on that. Which is something to keep in mind.
Sure, Lacey's in its usual leading position.
City USA.
I just want to say us having an implementation plan helps us when we do joint planning, right? We can set the standard. And I also wanted to thank the folks from TCAT. I think this new approach of giving us very structured languages and tweaks and it is better than simply copy and pasting each item to the under. And I just want to express my appreciation for that tactic. I think that makes our job much easier, and I'm hoping we can bang out like a decent sized chunk each meeting, roughly 20-ish we should get through in another 2 meetings and then be good.
For now.
For now. There's always more.
There's
but
always more.
An iterative process.
And I'll just mention that I had some communication that was offering when we get into the meat of this, if we're trying to figure out exactly what the TCAT recommendation meant, that Tom is here today, and if it feels like we're bogging down in that, I'm gonna invite him to sit at the table and just clarifies the kind of position that we're looking at.
As a person who is present for it.
As someone who, I believe he was a big part of these recommendations, the TCAT notes in our crosswalk, and so that just heads up, I might do that, even though it's unorthodox.
I would suggest that as a reasonable measure that that if he does come up here, it'd be when addressed, not.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
just before we dive in 100%, I also just want to reiterate, just because we don't move something verbatim into the comp plan, doesn't mean the county's not gonna do it.
Mhm.
So there, of course, there are some things that might not make sense for a land use plan. We can be creative, you can be as creative as you want. But that's just important, I think, to reiterate that this is not the act of the planning commission deciding that the county will not do these things. So.
Okay, back to you, Amelia.
All right, we were on B5.3.
20.
Yes, number 20 in the crosswalk. And I'll give everybody a second.
Here. I think this is the most current version.
All right, so the TCMP action description was install solar photovoltaics on all available and feasible municipal sites, including building rooftops, city hall, schools, police and fire stations, community centers, municipal water pump sites, and transit depots. The related comprehensive plan policies included CL1D2, which is install solar photovoltaics on all available and feasible county properties, including building rooftops and available ground areas. We also have CL1D3, which is facilitate the development of community-owned renewable energy generation projects and prioritize placement in historically underserved communities. And CL1D5, which is amend the local development code to require solar-ready construction for all building types as appropriate. PCAT's notes that were submitted to us say cited policy items do not directly address the TCMP action. An additional IP item is needed. Their suggested IP addition is install solar photovoltaics on all available and feasible municipal sites, including building rooftops. So it's, I think it's pretty much exactly
The exact language of
with
the action
short-term,
description.
yeah. So we don't have a city hall as a county. And like a few of those.
So if I could, I think the language that we already have in CL1 D.2 is good. I think it does make sense to simply copy our existing approved language that is county tailored into the implementation plan. So we're not inventing new language, we're not giving them a copy and paste, we're saying, we like our language, but this is an action, so it makes sense in an implementation plan. That would be my suggestion.
Like that.
I have one question about how we define feasible and how that changes over time.
I think that depends on the time and
Yeah.
what the regulations are.
And the financial condition of the county and the cost of electricity and all those
If
things.
the world's on fire.
For a long range plan, feasible is usually a pretty important.
Yeah,
If I may,
Please.
could we temperature check, just copying CL1 D2, the language that we already have, into the implementation plan? I know Commissioners Kaiser and Miller are, oh, there we go. Just checking, but I'm thumbs up on that, obviously.
I see
That you proposed.
Yeah, of course.
3 thumbs up in person and 1 online,
5 in person,
5 in person.
yes,
Commissioner
It's-
Miller.
all 5 of us.
Oh, okay.
So that's 6. I don't know where Commissioner Miller is on the topic.
Okay, so the planning commission's good with just having repeat policies.
Or repeat it
chapter
into the
and I-
implementation plan, CL1 T.2.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we're at 8 thumbs up.
Okay. B 5.5 is evaluate and adopt elements of the Soul Smart program and adopt solar friendly practices. We do have similar, but not exactly that on Soul Smart language. The Thurston 2045 code package does include changes to pursue higher Soul Smart designation, but Rebecca Harvey, our wonderful staff member, did suggest, you can add to this too. She suggested adding a new action, continue to advance the county's Soul Smart program participation beyond the current Soul Smart Silver designation to encourage solar energy development in the community. Actions may include codifying that accessory use solar PV is explicitly allowed by right in all major zones, streamlining regulatory processes for all types of solar, including ground-mounted and non-residential systems, posting community metrics related to solar and solar storage installations, installing solar PV on county-owned facilities and land.
There's one more. It might be a bit much. I don't know if this is more detailed than typical, but the final bullet was expanding community partnerships to promote solar development. So what I did with this was SoulSmart is very holistic, and all of those bullets are elements of the SoulSmart program to get from silver to gold. That very first one is the next the first of those bullets is the next prerequisite we have to meet, and it's already drafted, as we've noted here in the code package. So that might not be necessary to say if we're already doing that. The codifying that accessory use solar PV is explicitly allowed by right in all major zones. Maybe that's a little too in the weeds. So I'll leave it to you.
I don't think there's any harm in it being specific.
No.
And I think Rebecca's addition could address the TCAT notes that say why not specifically mention SoulSmart? And then add the following to the IP, pursue higher levels of SoulSmart designation, implement other elements of the SoulSmart program. So I think Rebecca's really holistic
Her language is
comment.
good.
Yeah.
So temperature check on adding that to the IP or policies.
So we're specifically looking at adding Rebecca's language to IPCL 25, if I'm understanding? Or are we adding a
I
new
think we might do it
implementation?
in-
plan?
I would actually replace IPCL 25.
Replace it
and
with your
we could
language.
maybe, if those like waiving or reducing fees language, maybe bring that in.
Bring the carrots in and
Yeah.
avoid the sticks.
I
Okay,
think
so.
tying it to SoulSmart makes sense.
So we're doing a temperature check on replacing CL 25 with Rebecca's language with the addition of bullet A from that item, which includes waiving and reducing fees that include local renewable energy generation to incentivize developers to include these features in land use proposals. Is that clear for everyone? Okay,
There was a 4, 5,
I think we're unanimous on that.
Yeah, we've got at
so
least
that's
one behind
majority.
you.
I'll get that added in the draft.
I love that you've taken
Alright.
on the clarification.
Yes,
Thank you.
it's fine. No.
And Rebecca, just to be clear, don't wait for me to call on you. I might forget, so just jump in whenever you want to.
B 5.8, the TCMP action description is amend local development code to require solar-ready construction for all building types. What we have in the comprehensive plan draft is amend local development code to require solar-ready construction for all building types as appropriate.
So
Yeah, I have some heartache on that one. I can't support, require solar-ready construction on things like single-family homes and ADUs and that kind of stuff. If we're trying, especially ADUs, if we're trying to make these cheaper and more affordable, requiring an ADU to be solar-ready, that will elevate the cost more, and I think it's worthwhile.
Clarification, can you help us understand specifically what solar ready might entail? Is that something? that can help?
It's basically building the electrical infrastructure to support solar, so it's not going as far as requiring solar panels be on the rooftop, but installing the conduit, installing the panel requirements and so forth.
I think of like in commercial construction, it would just be more conduit up through a chaseway or something.
What's your experience in this, in terms of the difference in cost, if you build it from the front end as opposed to try to add it later?
It's cheaper if you do it when you're building the building.
Yeah, retrofits.
50% cheaper, or 25%, 85%?
So I've known
I can't say for sure.
who've wanted to put solar panels on their house and they've abandoned it because of the cost of the electrical system upgrades.
Yeah.
if I could, the one addition that we've added to the language in our CL versus their language is as appropriate. And I think as appropriate is open to interpretation and does the heavy lifting for the scenarios that you're discussing. I do worry that as appropriate isn't well defined, and what does it as appropriate mean?
Is there a way that we can get more specific about that when the goals of solar ready construction conflict with the goals of affordable housing? Please.
Can I chime in with some additional information here?
Yes,
Uh,
please.
Hi, everyone. Maya Teeple, Senior Planner. So I do just want to state that the Washington State Building Code, specifically our State Energy Code, for which mirrors the 2021 International Building Code, does require solar ready for new construction, but that is usually only for single family, two family, and townhomes. So there is a certain requirement for new buildings. Same goes for electrical vehicle infrastructure. Like they need to be able to accommodate these new things. So in a lot of construction going forward, that's already the case. There could be situations where we have multifamily developments that maybe aren't ready for that type of construction. So you're talking about a limited subset here.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say that it does sound from what I'd understood before that, and especially now that I've heard that unfortunately or otherwise the burden that already exists like at higher levels already affects the smaller homes that we're talking about. This would be more getting at the other uses and making sure that they're in line with that. I would be open to carving exemptions for ADUs specifically if we wanted to talk about that.
I would
Because
agree.
that's a different.
It's a
thing
very
entirely.
small, they're designed to be small, cheap things that extend the house. They're running on the same electric as the bigger house. Like the bigger house could electrify and it would effectively electrify the ADU.
If we carve out ADUs, I'm on board.
That might come down at the regulation level when we have the draft codes for this later on, where we put in the exceptions.
Okay.
Could we do a temperature check that simply we like the language as is with the understanding that as appropriate excludes requirements on ADUs? It's more of an internal agreement thing, but not necessarily something we're writing down.
I would love to see it written down.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it being written. It just sounds like this isn't the area we'd put it, or could we say matching code?
Up to you guys.
Yes.
Matching code on ADUs or something like that? You okay with that?
I'm good with that. And I'd just state that I wouldn't mind going further than the state building code
Yeah.
with multifamily. I think I'd like to see, you know, even though it's not included apparently in the state code, I wouldn't mind including it in ours.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and if we're talking about housing affordability for multi-housing, multifamily specifically, the utilities is a major feature in that.
This is forward looking. This isn't applying to an existing multifamily unit. This is if you're redeveloping or newly developing, which makes sense.
You don't make this carve out for ADUs and somebody tries to do a conversion and then all of a sudden they gotta go solar ready on their conversion. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I agree. It makes it infeasible.
So what is the suggested language?
So the language I see here, yeah, sorry.
For all building types excluding ADUs as
Yeah.
appropriate?
I'm fine with that. What do we think?
Is that the only exclusion you'd want to consider in this area? So I can think of like maybe some like ag structures. I don't know if it's in our intention to,
Oh, should we,
Like outbuildings you're talking about?
like if somebody wants to build a
I
pole
was,
barn or.
yeah, I was thinking about
woodshed.
housing. Not thinking about,
I've got lots of buildings that don't even have electricity.
yeah.
That
would it
as
make sense to be
appropriate
under a
does
certain
carry a
square
lot
foot?
of weight.
Yeah, as appropriate
I-
is key there.
Yeah,
That's why we're carving out ADUs is because ADUs could be appropriate, but
These
we're specifying it.
details could be really useful when we get to that
Yeah,
draft code.
I would like to exclude
I
like
would,
agricultural buildings and things like
Okay.
that.
Agricultural outbuildings anyway.
so I'm wondering if a square footage thing might be a more appropriate way to do this under a certain square footage, right? Cause a very large new agricultural building that's going to be run electrical, it might make sense to put solar on it, right? But if it's a smaller outbuilding, same thing with an ADU, we're talking a limited footprint. If we said for all building types excluding ADUs and smaller like we could describe a specific size.
I think as appropriate might be your best chance.
Yeah,
I'm
as
also thinking of
appropriate.
like, what happens if you've got, somebody wants to put a horse arena on their property and they were gonna run a 2-circuit side panel to it and.
With some
all-
LED lights and that's it.
And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden they have to put, I think there's a scale of the.
Maybe you do it by how big of the service it is. The 400 amp service or bigger than you require.
Well, and this is, remember, this is a high level document.
Mhm.
What this conversation is leaning into is very much more into the regulatory code language. We probably want to keep this high level.
So just checking, if we added excluding ADUs and with the understanding that as appropriate is going to be worked out in the code for those small outbuildings and your horse barns or your, that like, let as appropriate do the heavy lifting, but include the ADU exclusion explicitly because we're all on board with that.
Yeah, and we can even go so far as to say that we are, like, one of our stated intentions is to not overburden agricultural uses.
I think we could find some language that would get there, if that's where you guys wanna go.
What if we do like a ADU as an example, but not limited to?
Yeah.
Oh,
like that.
including but
Cause-
not limited
Yeah,
to.
cause I think when you put
Yeah.
ADUs in there and then say as appropriate,
Somebody might.
that's gonna leave a lot of room for people to say, well, it's not appropriate here.
Right, I agree. I was gonna
Because they just
suggest,
called out ADUs.
I was gonna suggest something like
ADUs
ADUs and other buildings.
Other appropriate.
Yeah,
So-
something to the same effect.
Here. Let me try something.
So behind the comma maybe?
So amend local development code to require solar-ready construction for all building types as appropriate. Examples of exceptions include but are not limited to ADUs and small agricultural infrastructure. Is that?
Agricultural infrastructure with limited,
Or
I don't know.
I think small agricultural infrastructure.
infrastructure not serviced by electricity.
Well,
I mean, if I don't have electric in a building, why do I need solar panels?
Presumably that's already exempted. Am I incorrect on that?
Necessarily.
So why don't we do 3 bullets then? We'll say small agricultural, right? We'll say non-electrified buildings and ADUs. Does that make sense? Does that cover our bases?
I think these are just examples.
Just
So as
examples,
appropriate
and we're giving
covers
those
it.
3 examples.
Yep. I'm fine with that. We can staff can clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think
Impressed with the ability to.
If we've
to
got-
focus on the-
Are we thumbs up on it with those 3 examples?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
I guess it depends on how you define small.
And that's where we'd probably hash that out in the development code.
We'll come back with some,
Yeah.
I think we can get.
We were supportive of that. There were 6 in, oh, Rebecca.
It's not substantive. I just want to point out that I don't think it's mentioned in the crosswalk that IPCL 15 replicates the language of CL 1D5 already. So there is an implementation action.
So we don't actually have to copy it.
You don't have to copy it. You're just amending that instead of adding something new.
Okay, sweet. Good. So we're done with that one. On to 23?
All right, B510, develop, support a city-sponsored group solar purchasing program. So right now in the drafts, we have IPCL 25, which is continue to advance community solar programs that seek to integrate small-scale renewable energy.
Just replaced.
Yeah. So that one is what we just replaced with Rebecca's new action where it will talk about the Soul Smart program with the addition of waiving or reducing fees for uses that includes local renewable energy generation to incentivize developers to include these features in land use proposals. And then we also have IPCL 26, work with the TCMC to replicate and expand the 2025 Energize Thurston campaign, which provides discounted and subsidized installations of home heat pump equipment to reduce energy cost burdens and advance residential decarbonization. And then it explains that Energize Thurston was developed by the TCMC as a priority regional initiative for 2024 to 2025. Then we have CL1D3, which is facilitate the development of community-owned renewable energy generation projects and prioritize placement in historically underserved communities. We do have one of Rebecca's notes that says, I don't think a new action is needed. The Soul Smart action I suggested, which we've gone over earlier, includes partnerships such as this. And then TCAT's comments where they were suggesting a new IP item to develop and support a city-sponsored group solar purchasing program.
That's like the Solarize program.
Exactly, and it exists, it's been around
Yep.
for about 5 years, run by a nonprofit. And the last bullet of my Soul Smart items was expanding community partnerships to promote solar development. We've actually already received points in Soul Smart for supporting and promoting this program, this existing Solarize.
Please.
So I don't think we need to add that new language, and I would argue that calling it a city-sponsored thing doesn't make sense in a county code. The one thing that was included in this email that we received was to copy that last CL into an implementation plan item, which was to facilitate the development of community-owned renewable energy generation products and prioritize placement in historically underserved communities. I think copying that existing very loose language into implementation is not a detriment to anyone. And I would like to check to see if anyone objects to copying the existing language into the implementation plan on that item. So the last item on this list, CLD-3, their email, they request, so
Got it, okay.
they're just saying they like the language, it would make sense in the implementation, and I think that's very reasonable. And it, as it is written sort of loosely, it's not like it's binding us to anything horrible there. It's not like we're overextending ourselves. I think it makes sense to copy to implementation.
I would even suggest, with the passage of House Bill 1253 that allows for public-private partnerships, that I think it was just signed on Monday. There may be additional ownership types that would be available, and could be, some language could be included to just say, community-owned and
Public-private partnerships?
other legal, ownership structures that are allowed by state law. Or something to
We
that
wouldn't be
effect.
facilitating something that didn't involve a public element, right?
Right.
So the
It-
only ones that really would overlap is that public-private partnership.
Basically, it would, it sounds like from my reading of the bill, the county could, partner with a private developer to put solar on county buildings, or could partner with a private developer to build large scale solar.
That would be a partnership
Yeah.
in
so
both
I guess
situations.
Yeah,
So, okay. Hearing that, what are people's thoughts on including and public-private partnerships after community-owned for CL 1.d-3 or .3, and then copying that language into implementation?
I wonder if there's a way to be less specific so it doesn't exclude things we haven't thought of yet,
I don't know what other varieties would involve public involvement, though.
which is.
Because
That's
public-private
what I mean by
partnership
haven't thought of it yet.
is already a pretty good umbrella.
Sure, okay.
Would include utilities. I guess that could be, something with utility owned or a partnership with utilities might be that.
We could also facilitate something that was, it's getting a little bit different, but we could facilitate something that was a private initiative.
I'm wondering if the fact that this one specifies community owned isn't supposed to emphasize like the community owned as a preferential strategy, which I do understand why you would want to have something that highlighted that. I don't know if I'm not opposed to any of these, but I'm wondering if the reason that we want to keep public-private partnerships and private businesses and utilities as kind of separated out is to show that we do actually have this preference towards community ownership or other public ownership.
I think we might be able to work some of that language into the big Soul Smart item.
Perfect.
That's like expanding solar development through all these different mechanisms, exploring new ownership models or diverse ownership models,
Yeah.
something like
So
that.
adding that to the new CL 25 instead of
Yeah.
changing the
Instead of
language.
this, reading this, it stands on its own.
Specifically,
Yeah, and I think
Historically
you're right. I
underserved.
think it stands on its own.
Okay, so where we're at
Okay.
is not including the public-private partnerships in CL1D.3 because that should be included in the new IPCL 25 language that Rebecca drafted. So instead, we're only really temperature checking on copying the existing written language in CL1.D.3 into the implementation plan.
My one suggestion is does Soul Smart limit us to solar energy development? Project.
This is renewable.
Or you're talking about the already,
This is talking about energy generation, and we're gonna change it to solar projects, community-owned solar.
so no, we're specifically looking at CL1D.3, which is a separate item that does not specify solar.
It says renewable energy generation, yeah.
Yeah, so I think copying that gives us the way to support those other renewable energy products.
I think my point is, we can't capture that component into the Soul Smart.
Or the Soul Smart.
Which is why it makes sense to copy CL1D.3 to the implementation plan. Cause it doesn't specify solar.
Oh, I think
But it doesn't satisfy.
if I'm tracking,
We're gonna
I
miss
think
one.
what he's saying is that like public-private partnerships and other things, putting them into the Soul Smart doesn't capture
Oh.
energy generation as a whole.
You could say community-owned and driven, like those types of.
Though
things.
that
Owned and
gets it.
driven,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Community-owned.
Yeah,
Because ultimately, if there's not community support for it, we don't have a role in a partnership.
Hopefully.
You would hope so, like, we already have limited enough resources that we're just out there giving some extra consultation and facilitation to Puget Sound Energy's next solar project.
So what is the suggested language?
I think we're suggesting that CL-1D.3 stands on its own.
And
But
adding the words "and driven" after community owned. Community owned and community driven renewable energy generation projects.
I'm fine with that.
Temperature check on.
And copying it into an implementation plan.
yeah, okay.
Do we do those temperature checks separate?
Let's try.
Let's try everything together, and if we
Okay,
don't, then we-
everything together then.
I think we're good.
Yeah, I don't think we have any objections there.
All right, so I'll cross out all my other notes and just make sure.
There's some that are gonna go real quick.
Do you
here.
understand my comment about just figuring out where to put that, if something is available to us, we should explore it.
The
Rather,
bill you were speaking of was specifically for solar ownership.
no, that was, it was energy generation and it started as a bill strictly for PUDs. But as it went through the legislature, it got amended to include a lot of other government entities. 1253 Rep. Alex Ibarra, I think was the sponsor.
If there was a community support for a wind project or something like that,
Yeah.
why not?
I'm wondering. if that could
Biomass
be
or
a
something,
separate
yeah,
action
it could
then,
be a
because
separate
if it's
thing.
Renewable and.
Yeah, it could,
Made that good
it could
call.
potentially
It
be
should-
a
doesn't belong
copy
to
of
Soulsmart.
CL-1D.3, just removing community owned to
Yeah,
other ownership structures.
because it wouldn't necessarily make sense to prioritize any alternative ownership model in a historically underserved community
Right.
that's specific to these communities.
Right. So, thank you.
Clarification.
24?
Yeah, I think we're.
Are you feeling comfortable with the direction that you've been given in terms of, do you need more
From
information?
what I understand, I am adding and driven after community owned in CL1D3, and then I am copying all of that into the IP as a new action.
Great. That's also my understanding.
Yeah.
Sorry, that one got a little leggy. I'm
That's
sorry.
I try to make sure I ask for the specifics because I don't wanna misunderstand anything. Okay, B6.1, educate business owners and residents on the options for electric appliances and the benefit of pairing electrification with the installation of renewable energy. Create incentives to support fuel switching. So we do have CL1C1, it's a lot. That's similar, but obviously not the same. Support state building and energy code development and implementation specific to decarbonization and electrification. help educate and support building officials, partners, and staff to implement energy and building codes that reduce energy use, embodied carbon of materials, and phase out fossil fuel use. Rebecca Harvey's notes included, instead of adding a new action, I suggest modifying existing action IPCL 26. Work with the TCMC to replicate and expand the 2025 Energize Thurston campaign, which provides education and financial incentives on electric heat pump equipment and other electric appliances to reduce the energy cost burdens and advance building decarbonization. Energize Thurston was developed by the TCMC as a priority regional, sorry, I need to switch between documents.
Initiative for 2024 to
Yeah,
2025.
there was that like little bit of just extra information. The TCAT comment says they want to make sure residents are included. And they want a specific IP action. Which
Exact
could
language again.
be worked with Rebecca's IP CL 26 modifications. Their suggestion was their language and adding a timeline.
Sorry, I feel like I'm dominating a little, but
Go for it.
I'm just trying to keep us efficient
Yeah.
here. I like Rebecca's idea to simply add and appliances to CL 26. I think that's simple because it's just an example. And then I think TCAT's recommendation is reasonable when we say help educate and support building officials, partners, and staff. There's no reason we can't also educate residents when we do that work. This is a CL item, not an IP item, so it's speaking broadly to our objectives. So my two suggestions, if folks are amenable, would be to use Rebecca's suggested language for 26 to add the electric appliances suggestion into IP CL 26 and simply add the word residents to the list of people we're educating in CL 1C.1.
That's good.
Before. Looks like we've got the majority, so I will add residents to CL 1C1 and I will modify the language in IPCL 26 according to Rebecca's suggestions.
We're not adding any term, but we decided against
Totally
adding
fine with
term
that.
lines at this point.
Huh?
So it's like the only other aspect was like short-term, long-term, et cetera. We haven't been talking about that for any of these up to this point, so I'm just.
I don't
clarifying that
believe
We're not
so.
discussing terms at this point.
No, with IPCL 26, it already exists, so it will already have a timeline.
Great.
And education, I mean, that's an ongoing thing. It doesn't really need a timeline.
Yeah, it's just when it starts getting implemented, but yeah, I hear you.
All right, so B 6.2, the TCMP action description is update municipal code to require electric appliances in new construction. So this is related back to that CLC 1, which will now say residents in it. Where it's working with building and energy code development to support electrification and decarbonization. Initiative 2066 may limit some of that. I think that was last year at this point.
It was November. It was passed in November by the voters. It's been challenged, or it's been declared unconstitutional by King County Court, but it's still going to be appealed and probably go to the Supreme Court. So I would say its legal status is uncertain. So I don't know how the county wants to proceed in that case, maybe a little more cautiously. I also made a comment earlier last week, or you read a comment that I think I said it needs wordsmithing, but I thought there might be, it might be a good idea to have an action item of reviewing existing state building codes. There was discussion about, but the public doesn't want studies. And then I think you all settled on, we do like a study, like researching in this particular case. That was my recollection of, researching what's in the existing building codes and considering stretch codes or, just as a general action, because I think there's several TCMP actions that do need research on what this current most up-to-date building codes say on that particular matter, and this would be one of those.
So you're suggesting a new CL that
And-
supports researching
A new IP.
a new IP.
That would be an action item to research, here it is. Research the state energy code and identify opportunities to implement stretch codes to achieve further energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction, and then maybe list some examples.
Including electrical appliances.
I like that. I like that it's ongoing. That's not something that we have to, that only happens once, so it makes sense to keep it in there.
It opens us up to grant opportunities too, in a way that isn't like really gonna hamstring us, I would think.
Yeah, I definitely get wanting action instead of studies, but like even after we start the actions, we're still gonna need studies for future actions, so.
And we've also added electric appliances as an example to CL 25. So we've already partially addressed this. I'm generally supportive of the language Rebecca suggested. I think it doesn't hurt us in any way and opens us up to some more grant opportunities potentially. Temperature check on
Anyone else?
Rebecca's language?
Have a thought?
I'm alright with it.
I'm all right with it too.
Is on B4.9 or B4.7. No, B4.9. What did I?
B 4.7 or B 4.9?
B4.11. It
There
was,
we go.
the
Okay.
smart appliances is when it came up.
There we
That could
go,
be another
there.
example. Electric appliances, smart appliances.
All right, now
I'm
I've got
gonna
a
address this a
reference
future
pulled up.
item too, so it'll make things easier.
Okay, then B 6.4, the TCMP action description is phase out new natural gas connections in new buildings over time, which is related to what we were just speaking about. That is somewhat addressed with the support state building and energy codes to decarbonize. But are we wanting to add any specific language on phasing out natural gas?
I would like that.
If I could. I'm not opposed to adding a new implementation item. I feel like it might need softened a little bit. Since its equivalent CL is support state building and energy code, maybe just support the phase out of new natural gas connections in new buildings over time. We're not creating a new mandate through the plan, but we're expressing our support for it doing it.
In favor of renewable alternatives.
Adding in favor of renewable alternatives. So it
We're
would,
not just replacing with coal or something like
the new, so the new language as collaboratively just spitballed by us would be support the phase out of new natural gas connections in new buildings over time to renewable alternatives.
Or electric. I mean, I think when you're phasing out natural gas, you're electrifying, decarbonized, or
Yeah.
fossil fuel.
I'd like to think that we're going to continue in that route, and not go some steampunk alternative.
I mean, there are some really interesting like composting solutions that also heat your water and don't require electricity. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't feel super strongly that we need a new implementation here, but don't think it hurts anything to add a new implementation item here.
Yeah, and my argument for it is that with it just being decarbonization, there's a lot of arguments that like people make around things like natural gas saying like, oh, it uses less carbon than, you know, like, I don't know, again.
It's putting
like,
nitrogen in
yeah,
the air and that's also a problem.
like burning whales, but like.
Do we
So
want to do a
for-
temperature check?
Or lower fossil fuel use.
Mhm.
Or something like that.
So instead of saying towards renewables, simply state towards lower carbon alternatives or lower
That's good.
lower carbon alternatives, or you don't want to say carbon because you don't think that's the only suggestion?
No, I guess, sorry, my statement initially had been in support of your amendment. I was just specifying why.
Oh, so you don't want to add language there?
The language of renewables is the language I'm interested in.
Towards renewable.
Just, I was specifying renewables as opposed to low carbon because I was concerned about
True, but they're not going to add renewables. It's what's powering it in this
Yeah.
situation.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I think that's where the confusion started.
Yeah, okay, no.
I think
I'm
we've
back on page.
established the renewables in CL 25. I don't
Yeah.
think we need to call it out.
Okay, yeah, I'm back on board.
Okay, so as it stands, we're looking at adding a new IP item that says support the phase out of new natural gas connections in new buildings over time.
But we're still leaving the language in the.
We're not modifying the
CL
language.
that
We're
we
just
support
adding
the
a new
building
implementation.
And energy codes of the state, okay,
Right.
cause I think for me, this is something where I wanna follow what the state is doing
Mhm.
rather than get ourselves in a situation like that is controversial and expensive.
We're just supporting. We're not
Yeah, okay.
necessarily mandating. We're not using this to write new laws and get ourselves on hot water. So temperature check.
I'm fine with that.
My thumb's getting carpal tunnel.
Looks like we have well,
Do we?
we have
We've got,
Kevin in the
Mr.
room.
Miller's thumb step on the,
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, 1, 2.
And so did that include 2 renewable alternatives or
No.
no? Okay.
We literally, it's just
just
adding the word
support
support the and an of to
Okay.
make it grammatically flow.
All right, can do. Okay. 27, T 1.1. Coordinate long-term plans with transit agencies to project where increased density would support more transit corridors. Then change zoning density that would support new transit corridors and variety of household incomes. Promote long-term equity and healthy communities by developing incentives such as density bonuses for development where a percentage of the units will be permanently affordable for household incomes. Look for opportunities to meet the sustainable Thurston land use vision by reducing urban sprawl. So we definitely liked some of this language and we pulled it in. CL 2B2 has promote long-term equity and healthy communities by developing incentives such as density bonuses near public transportation hubs for development where a percentage of the units will permanently be affordable for household incomes. We also have CL 1A1, conduct environmental justice audits prior to creating new zoning designations or rezoning. CL 2A2, conduct audits of existing transportation systems to identify and address accessibility gaps among overburdened and vulnerable populations. CL 2B1, evaluate and adjust zoning to support a range of housing types and income levels. Consider strategies such as inclusionary and incentive-based zoning to promote social economic integration by encouraging the development of mixed income housing near the region's urban centers or moderate density zones. We also have IPT 15, incorporate land use policies into transportation improvement program decision-making process. IPCL 7, promote the use of health impact assessments and other tools to address the potential impacts of health, equity, and climate change on vulnerable communities. That was including prioritize the development of anti-displacement programs in overburdened communities when increasing densities, incorporate measures to improve affordability in zoning in urban and rural areas, and avoid development standards that could increase the cost of housing. TCAT's comment on here was the final phrase, avoid development standards that could increase the cost of housing is often used by opponents of clean energy and energy efficiency standards. Given the language that precedes it, it is unnecessary, according to TCAT. So is the language about,
I'm looking at what it looks like without that, yeah.
yeah,
I actually have a thought here. It's not what TCAT requested, but it's a suggestion. So 2 things here. I feel like this should be not one bullet under this section. It's difficult to read. And I know I'm getting grammatical here, but I feel like prioritize the development of anti-displacement programs in overburdened communities when increasing densities is 1 bullet. Incorporate measures to improve affordability in zoning in urban and rural areas, 1 bullet.
Yeah.
And instead of scratching that last one, I think we just need to slightly soften the word avoid. And I think maybe using consider the impacts of instead of avoid, since we're trying to balance affordability with environmental impacts makes the most sense. So my suggestion would be to break it into 3 bullets and change avoid to consider the impacts of.
For me.
okay, so temperature check on all 3 of those. That is a clear majority.
Nice and
So
clean.
split.
Isn't it nice
and
when I work
consider
ahead?
impact of instead of avoid. Okay, moving on.
I really wanted this to not last as last time.
So we have T 1.2, which is reevaluate and change zoning as needed to allow for a range of housing types to promote social
Oh,
Did
economic
we
integration.
skip over a couple of IPs in the last one?
27
Yeah,
breaks
so
the
those are just
page.
additional languages
Okay.
that we've got.
That are.
That wasn't
addressed.
additional
Okay.
request.
Perfect. Okay.
One point on that, and this is just a question. We use the word telework a lot in here. Telework is dated language, in my opinion. I think remote work is the better term, right? Telework is referring to a time when you literally use the telephone to do your job, and that is not what we're saying
What's the
here.
state policy say right now?
Remote work.
Yeah.
Let's use it.
I think we should be more consistent and use remote work where applicable. It doesn't change the meaning, but
Well, in so much as it does, it's more inclusive in a way that's beneficial.
true. Remote work is also a little more flexible with, you don't necessarily have to be at your house when you're doing your job.
Yep.
You're at your computer, which,
I like that suggestion.
There's a
So-
good joke about phoning it in right here, but I'm
so should we
currently
temperature check?
representing Thurston County, so no.
We temperature check the use of remote work
I don't
instead of
think we have
telework
to.
or?
I don't
I'd
think
sell
we
lots
have
of
to.
phones.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to, I know that was me being a stickler,
No,
but
you're good.
That's something I think Maya and I can easily handle.
control, find, replace.
Okay, so T 1.2, that's that reevaluate and change zoning as needed to allow for a range of housing types to promote social economic integration of housing near key regions, urban centers, or moderate density zones. And that's CL2B1 pretty much. What we have is evaluate and adjust zoning to support a range of housing types and income levels. Consider strategies such as inclusionary and incentive-based zoning to promote social economic integration by encouraging the development of mixed income housing near the region's urban centers or moderate density zones. We have a few others that for the sake of my own voice.
We've read a lot of these already.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of repeats. So the TCAT notes, this TCMP action focuses on the urban centers and moderate density zones. This is not applicable to the county's unincorporated areas. Since density efforts in Thurston County should be exclusively in the urban areas, density efforts are not applicable to the county other than limiting housing development in rural unincorporated areas. We don't need new growth in the UGAs is TCAT's opinion here. Sure. We need greater density in the urban areas. So we suggest removing TCAT the following from CL2B1 by encouraging the development of mixed income housing near the region's urban centers or moderate density zones. And removing the following from CL2B2 such as density bonuses near public transportation hubs for development where a percentage of the units will be permanently affordable for household incomes. And they want to modify IPCL 7 to read, promote the use of health impact assessments and other tools to address the potential impacts of health equity and climate change on vulnerable communities and adding prioritize development of anti-displacement programs in overburdened communities, incorporate measures to improve affordability zoning in rural areas. I'm not quite sure where the change is.
It's simply removing the word when increasing densities.
Okay.
So they're basically saying that we should prioritize the development of anti-displacement programs in overburdened communities, period, not just when we're increasing their density.
So a lot of these TCAT notes are focused that they don't believe we should have growth in the UGAs.
I'm
We have an
gonna comment on that.
obligation.
I don't agree with that.
And that does go against the Growth Management Act.
Yeah, we have an obligation to plan for growth, and I would rather plan where it goes versus not address it and then just have sprawl in non-UGA areas.
UGAs are intended to
The G
develop
in
to
UGA
urban
stands for
standards.
growth.
And urban, right? We already talked
Yeah.
about urban, so what do we think? I don't support most of these changes. The only thing I would consider is removing the when increasing densities. I don't know, what are staff's thoughts on removing that specific line?
I don't know if it's necessarily helpful for the intent, but that is up to you.
I don't feel strongly on that tiny tweak, but generally speaking, I'm a thumbs down on their changes. I understand, I just
And we can
can't
do a
violate
temperature
the,
check on just doing no change.
Oh, on the no change?
no change.
Yeah, no change.
I like what we have. We already have a ton of
That
stuff.
seems like the majority for no change
Where
on T.
Sandy or
Two.
Yvonne? No change?
No change.
They're both thumbs ups.
Okay, so now T 1.3, identify potential eco districts to advance innovative district scale urban development, sustainability and neighborhood equity.
Amelia? Just to save you, they agree with us that we don't need to change anything.
It's
here.
good, all right.
So let's just do
I'm
nothing.
going.
We're all,
So are you guys good with everything staying the same for T 1.3?
and T 1.4, they also the same. They agree that it's cities focused, and so they agree. We don't need to do anything
So
there.
T 1.3 and 1.4 temperature check on no change. Okay,
Sorry, I just wanted to save you from reading all of it again. So we're on to,
From now on, maybe just ask any opposed instead of 1,000 thumbs up.
Sure.
we're too productive, I'm sorry. The thumb muscles, they're getting weak.
Be stronger next time.
all right, so T 1.9.
Mhm.
Okay, just making sure I didn't skip anything. This one is amend development codes to allow for attached and detached accessory dwelling units in urban residential areas. That's from the TCMP. We do have housing 2A3 permit accessory dwelling units in all residential zones within rural areas and urban growth areas around cities and towns to provide additional housing choices for all economic income levels, multi-generational and smaller households. And H3A7 permit accessory dwelling units in rural residential zones to provide additional housing choices. It's pretty much the same thing. So ADU changes are part of the 2045, I think, joint plans and codes. And then TCAT had notes that they want an additional IP item. Amend development codes to allow for attached accessory dwelling units in urban residential.
Is that in addition to or as an alternative to?
I think I understand what they're requesting here.
I think I do.
So they're basically, I don't think they're disagreeing with what we have here. They would like their exact language, but I don't think their exact language is the right call here. The language in H-2A3, that first one there that's currently in the plan, I think addresses it and it's county specific. They bring a point that we're saying, hey, we're gonna do this permitting. Let's copy that into an implementation plan. So I would suggest simply copying H2.A.3 into the implementation plan as written. I think that's fair.
What was the way, Commissioner Pessinger, you wanted to,
Any opposed?
okay, any? Oops.
No opposition. You have
Right.
consensus.
Okay, so copy H2A3 into IP.
Yeah, I don't think we need to use their language there. We're vague where it's important. We don't need to specify attached and detached if they're both allowed.
T1.11. Oh, speaking of carpal tunnel, okay.
I can read if you would like.
Should not have popped like that. So set integrated goals to consider network efficiency and reduce urban sprawl in land use decisions, including how density in certain areas supports transit, increases efficiency of utility service, and other support facilities. Consider vehicle miles traveled, VMT, and identifying locations for large employment facilities. So that's from the TCMP. We have a list.
Also like the goal of the Growth Management Act.
Yeah, so we've got lots of similar language that works required to the Growth Management Act goals and our zones, policies, and systems that we have available for us. TCAT's main concerns are, I think that it's primarily applicable to urban centers. Let's see.
They're basically saying that we should consider that the language there could unintentionally create sprawl. I think we've already decided we can't just forbid that. And so I think we hear their point, but I don't see there's an action that we need to take.
Well, it looks like they were looking at
The transit.
Right, but they were looking at change in 2.2 that would essentially just reflect what's already in 6.8.3.
CL2B.2,
Yeah.
where is that language?
It's at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Oh, it's at the bottom? This is bridge. Oh, they put their comments across 31 and 32. Unless they suggest it later?
I don't see a need for a change to the suggested language from staff.
I don't see a change, I'm sorry. Can we temp check no change?
Anyone
Any
opposed
opposed?
to no change to county language or staff language?
Cool.
Alright, okay. So T 2.2,
Not applicable.
They agree that we don't need to do anything here.
love it. So I'm
Moving
gonna go
on.
with no change unless I see.
They did suggest that CL2 B4 and 2B5 do contain language that's useful and could be replicated as one or two implementation actions in the climate section.
Is that in the email they sent?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking
Okay,
at.
so it wasn't in the.
Yeah.
I can get to here.
I think, so I just do wanna say, if we're copying it over as an implementation action, it's essentially the same weight. Like, the part of the goal of the implementation action is to say how. So I don't know that it changes much if we move it in as an implementation action versus a policy.
I would say too, a lot of the items earlier that they suggested copying were more tactical in nature. These are very general statements, and I don't necessarily agree with TCAT that these need to be copied over, since a generalized statement in the implementation plan carries no real additional weight, as you said.
Fair enough. I just wanted to make sure we discussed it.
It would essentially operate the same way as it currently does.
So temp check, no change?
Anyone
Any
opposed to no change?
Okay. So T 2.4, the TCMP action is develop educational campaigns about benefits such as reduced greenhouse gas emission, increased fuel efficiency, safety of properly inflated tires, including signage at gas stations and local businesses and partnering with schools. So this one, we definitely did not have language talking about properly inflated tires. We do have something similar we could work off of or change. What we did have related to this was promote public education on the rights and duties of drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians, teach safe, efficient ways to travel together. So some of the possible additional language that staff came up with does not mean it's the recommended action, just in the option. Is develop and share educational campaigns about ways drivers can improve sustainability and efficiency of their vehicles. And that way,
would
we can
suggest
keep it
that-
kind of general and it can apply to multiple modes of travel.
We should say that we should implement the Don't Wait to Inflate campaign that King County and the Storm Network developed.
So that would be part of the sharing education campaigns. We could say including such
I would like
as.
to use it as an
I
example.
think,
So
As an example, yeah.
TCAT's notes said basically, take staff suggestion and add, for example, proper tire inflation and other measures. I think we've already used their language that's general. So we could say, for example, and then the don't wait to inflate campaign.
and I actually see it a good, simple nexus with work that we already do and already have funding for, and this is good.
Okay, so
Anyone opposed to that suggestion?
Can we affirm which suggestion?
can
we're
I
asking
can
about?
summarize
Go for
it
it,
if you
yeah.
like. So the new measure would state, promote public education on the rights and duties of drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians, teach safe, efficient ways to travel together, develop and share education campaigns about ways drivers can improve sustainability and efficiency of their vehicles. For example, the Don't Wait to Inflate campaign.
Nicely done, okay.
I wasn't sure if Commissioner Nelson, you had your hand up. It looked like you were about to speak.
Well, I was just thinking about I'm not opposed to what he
Okay, cool.
said. It was what what was written here, I was like,
Oh,
I
okay.
don't see how tire inflation has anything to do with land use.
It actually has a lot to do with stormwater, whole different story.
Let's knock out two more and then call it a night.
So, do you want?
You don't wanna just finish this?
Well, we're,
I wanna
Until
get,
10, but
I wanna get to 39, that's how far I went.
I'm a big fan of getting this done.
well,
I
We
can
are-
go quicker too.
So T217, the TCMP language is government agencies increase opportunities for employee teleworking options and staggering workdays to reduce employees driving during peak traffic times.
Our existing language basically doesn't address that point.
Yeah, and we did have notes from Rebecca to suggest connecting this action to the existing CTR program.
That's commute trip reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, the county just, the Board of County Commissioners just adopted an updated local CTR plan.
Mhm.
And we worked with TRPC, developed that, and they operate the CTR program for the region. So I think it makes sense to tie it into that existing program. I add language, something like, yeah,
Yeah.
give you a break.
Go for it.
Partner with TRPC to implement the strategies and actions of the Regional Commute Trip Reduction CTR program, monitor progress of affected work sites within the county's jurisdiction toward meeting adopted CTR targets, and develop an updated internal CTR policy for the county. There we go, for county employees.
I thought that it was interesting that you suggested that we require a SEPA review for all return to work. I'm kidding. I want to note that there is some conflict of interest as staff people who would be.
I think by tying it
No,
to that.
that's a real deal. I just saw a big state presentation about the whole Project Zero deaths on the roadways, and they were showing statistics, but only from the last 4 years, that there's been an increase in deaths on the highways, on the roadways. But they don't give you the context of with COVID, obviously there's been a massive increase as people have returned to driving when they had such a downfall in driving and commutes. And by the way, I heard they were also state people and maybe other jurisdictions taking credit for when COVID happened. Oh, look at the massive impact we had on reducing CPR. Like, it's just insane. I don't even know if we need to put like a statement in there, use accurate data, actual data.
I am generally supportive of the language that Rebecca drafted.
I think it's good.
yeah, anybody have heartburn over it?
I guess I was curious about whether we wanted to get into any of the specifics that were mentioned, about like staggering workdays or, during peak traffic times or anything like that.
I think
No,
that's
I-
overly prescriptive.
Yeah, I like the idea of just adopting the
High
CTR.
level policy.
Well, and that's the thing, like if TCAT cares about this, then they could appeal to the BOCC to add staggering to the CTR.
Yeah, they'd be able to use this as leverage to get that
As
more
a
specific
method of
thing.
tweaking the CTR, so that way if we reference the CTR, you can change this more quickly than the 20-year plan by just amending the CTR.
I'd agree with that.
Okay. I will make note to add that.
State agencies.
All right, so 36 T513, there were some differences in the TCMP numbering, but the TCMP action description is develop grants and provide financial resources for installation of infrastructure necessary to support telecommuting. They were suggesting to add this to the IP. Yeah, not sure.
If I could, I don't necessarily think this needs an implementation plan, because again, it's kind of vague. What I would say is I think CL2 B.4 needs to add telecommuting infrastructure support to its list of things.
Remote work.
Yes, remote work, infrastructure support as, so it would read, increase the adoption of public and low carbon transportation options and more sustainable modes of travel, including remote work using policies, incentives, education, and remote work infrastructure support. So
Do you think by just saying increase the adoption of options, including remote work already does that?
Are you talking about
I think-
making sure that employees have the connection and
That's
the
specifically
equipment?
what they're saying, like, you
Yeah.
can promote remote work all you want, but like, hey, do you have a few like MiFi devices you could pass out to folks who might live in a rural area and high-speed broadband is not reasonable? Like, the county or the employer should, like, we should do that. I don't see how that's a problem. That's far less carbon intensive to and we're just generally supporting telecommuting infrastructure support.
Also, I keep wondering whether we talk about encouraging employees. I think almost all the employees want to do remote work.
It's
They
the
can
employers.
Encourage the bosses.
Yeah,
Actually, it
Yes.
doesn't specify employees in this. It just says broadly, encourage the adoption of public and low carbon transportation options and more sustainable modes of travel, including telework using policies, incentives, and education. They're saying one of the support methods that we should put there should be remote work infrastructure.
yeah, that's why it needs to be referenced.
So I feel like it's missing an action. We should be maybe improving.
Could that be, should that be its own bullet point? To make it easier to read and understand?
Oh,
Right.
you're saying use bullets instead of a comma list here? Okay.
Hang on a second, Commissioner Sewer.
Yeah, so to Commissioner Pestinger's point, it does, P3C2 does say support and expand programs that encourage employees to use other ways to commute to work.
I have a note to ask if we can work on that right after this, because I think maybe we could say employers.
Yes, okay.
But maybe we finish up the
Okay.
CL2 before.
Okay.
So I don't get my notes all mixed up.
Thank you. Okay, so tabbed.
Use adoption. And just to add, remote work infrastructure to.
Including, okay, and so to make this work, just because it's clunky to try and include, go ahead.
I see
I have
suggestion.
an idea,
Making-
it says increase the adoption and infrastructure support
Yeah.
of public and low carbon transport.
Oh, and because that's
Then it
even better.
supports
It's not just
multiple
remote work that
things.
we're supporting
Yeah.
there. I like that. Thank you, because I was trying to make that, kludge that in somehow.
It turns out policy writing is hard. Okay, so any opposed to increase the adoption and infrastructure support of public, ... Okay. And then popping back to Commissioners Fishburne and Pestinger's notes on T3C2. Yeah, no, Commissioner Pestinger mentioned that about employees versus employers, and I was like, yeah, there's something we could change right there. Right now it says support and expand programs that encourage employees to use other ways to commute to work instead of driving alone. And it continues on. Would we like to change that to employers?
Well,
Both employees and employers,
yeah.
Why don't we just cut that out?
Yeah.
just
Just
encourage.
say
That-
encourage other ways to commute.
Yep, agreed.
Oh, that's clean.
Less is more.
Any objections?
It works.
Okay, so
Yeah.
cutting, all right, so encourage other ways to commute.
Mhm.
All right, okay.
Sounds good.
I know you want to be done, but I just want to point out, so 37 and 39 are basically identical. And 38 doesn't apply. So if we tackle both 37, 39 with one change, we can get our whole 20 in.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
And what I think Rebecca can speak to this one because your comments in 37 and 39 are basically the same. That the Thurston 2045 package codifies state requirements for EV charging stations, EV ready and EV capable buildings by building occupancy type and including regulations for clear and simple permitting. Required for residential, 1 EV ready per unit for dwellings with less than 2 units, and all others 10% stations and 25% EV ready. Were you suggesting we add that, just copy that existing code language into IPCL 19?
I don't think that's my addition.
Oh,
And I'm not sure where you're reading that.
so
I just said I don't I think this is covered in IPCL 19.
Which are we at? We're at
37 and 39, the comments are the same.
Okay. Yeah, I think Rebecca's comment for 37 was, I don't think this additional action is needed. It's covered in IPCL 19.
And the staff insights and considerations basically says that state requirements already cover this essentially.
Yeah,
And I think maybe if we just add follow state requirements for EV charging stations, EV ready and EV capable building by occupancy type. Basically just detail the state requirement there.
do we need that though? We already do follow state requirements.
We're already building upon.
Yeah.
Code.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we need new implementation items for either. They suggested require electrical vehicle charging infrastructure in all new and retrofitted buildings, including single family and commercial dwellings, which again is a huge burden. And how would you, yeah.
Commercial dwellings.
Commercial dwellings is some bad writing, sorry.
Yeah, require EV charging stations on county property, which we already have. Support the deployment of EV charging stations on non-county property, such as at gas stations and granges, which is existing language. They just want to add, yeah, I don't love the commercial dwellings.
I have made a note to change that to buildings.
Okay.
Then we're great. Yeah.
I was like, that's a very small correction.
Yeah,
rather
they
than
simply
saying-
wanted to add one bullet that says, create a simple and consistent residential charging station permitting process to reduce costs and time to development, which I think is reasonable.
Yeah,
I don't think we need to add anything for 37. I think that last bullet suggestion they make is very reasonable, and I think we should support it.
so we would like to add IPCL 76 according to TCAT's recommendation.
Just that last bullet, yep.
Just the last bullet.
Yeah,
Create a
yeah,
simple and
the
consistent
addition to it,
residential
yeah.
charging station, yeah.
Okay.
And that gets us to 1220.
Well, so the 38 and 39 was what you were saying.
That the language comes from 39 that I was suggesting, which is why I wanted to tackle them, because they're
Okay.
modifying the same CL.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to hash it out where the recommendation wasn't, when the real meaty recommendation there is in that last.
So add it to IPCL 19.
Yes.
Okay, I understand now.
That last bullet point
Mhm.
in 39.
I know that's a slog, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, thank you for keeping us on track. Yes, Commissioner Barton.
Just one additional thing, I just wanted, because it was mentioned in public comment, Ms. Norton suggested something about the the wildlife corridors being considered under climate impact as well. That seems like a pretty low barrier, sort of just checking to make sure that we're looking at things in both spots. I just wanted to add it into our end of the record.
So was she suggesting, so it wasn't clear for me from her comments, was she suggesting a new item or reiterating existing language in the climate chapter?
My understanding was referencing the existing language.
My suggestion would be, we've got pieces in the climate section that speak to species. If we add the corridors and
Oh, yeah.
migration areas as if we reference them, I think helps draw the connections across, that might
I like
be the
that.
way to do it.
Should we use our existing consensus process on that?
Consensus process.
Anyone opposed to a slight linkage there
That
to?
makes sense.
So, please rephrase.
We would put some language in the narrative where we talk about species and impacts to landscapes.
In climate.
Yeah, in climate, about migration corridors and migration corridors.
Wildlife corridors.
Corridors for migration.
It was migration and,
There's.
I'm trying to remember what the word
So
is. for it, but
climate
for
related
ecosystems,
migrations?
Yeah,
Okay,
ecosystem shifts.
Yeah, animals and ecosystems can move.
okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that was covered while it was still relevant.
My brain is mush.
So. Okay, on to other business. Derek Day with the staff update.
I don't have anything particular for the staff update today. We,
Got a new person, sounds
oh,
great.
yeah, we do have a new person, that we, been- it's kind of a new person. It's a new to our side of the office person. So Natalie was on the current planning side, we've moved over, so. Our musical, some of our musical chairs, I mean, it's internal. coaching.
Did Noah start yet?
I'm not sure.
I believe I've seen him in the office.
Good.
There was a new person on that side that I have not been introduced to yet, and I have a suspicion it's him.
The new does floodplain management and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think they're having him, is he an associate planner? So we'll see how much time he gets to dedicate to that right away.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's something we could probably steal a lot.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we can get some more floodplain management expertise. But yeah,
He was a great hire.
and Thurston County needs floodplain managers, so if you know any, send them my way.
Okay, Thurston 2045 update from my people.
Yeah, thank you. Just a short update for the Planning Commission tonight. We are working on setting up a open house in the community. We'll be piggybacking onto the Swede Day event. So we plan to have 2 booths there at that festival. And we'll have our full suite of posters, poster for every chapter. Staff there available to answer questions. We'll advertise it as a normal open house, but we also hope to get more attendance just by passerbys who might be attending that event.
And the date of that is?
June 21st, it's a Saturday.
Thank you.
Have you all ever been to a Sweet Day event?
Yeah.
The last one almost ended in a political riot, so good luck with that.
It's a great event. It's really fun. It's a great event and it's part of the county we don't get to too often. And so, yeah, I think this is really cool.
Yeah. I must have missed that.
Should have been, it had to do with the school district.
Are you still allowed?
There's just a poster like not permitted.
Yeah.
More Wayne Fournier.
Reasonable exception.
If you're in your official capacity, I think that might get you around that.
Okay, thank you, Maya. Appreciate it. Next we have calendar with agenda items. Attendance, June 4th is our next meeting.
I likely will not be able to attend. Vacation and probably out in the woods.
Okay, good. Anybody else know that they can't make it on June 4th? I'll be here. Looks like we'll likely have quorum, so that's good. And then on June 18th, do we have any? Will not make it.
I may not be here for the 18th.
I might not be here for the 18th.
I will not be.
Oh, okay, that's cutting it close. I can try and find a internet connection.
Would the other option be a special meeting instead the following week?
No, we're back up to 10 commissioners appointed.
Yeah. Yeah. You might be driving the bus that night.
Driving the bus with 5 of us. Okay.
Yeah.
6 of us.
I'm not on a plane. That has happened before though.
We'll check again at that next meeting, and if it looks really dicey, maybe.
Yeah, we can reevaluate this.
So also we'll be slogging through probably more of this, and that might not be the best experience with half as many people here.
Good. Okay,
I mean, it could just be the Daniel show and say, I want all these things. Everyone goes, yes, we're done. I'm kidding. I am kidding for the record.
for the good of the order. Yes, Commissioner Bissell.
Congratulations to Chair Hansen for his impending guaranteed election.
I don't want anybody to jinx it. Could get a big write-in campaign here if I say too much. Commissioner Bartlett.
Oh, I just wanted to welcome new Commissioner Miller.
Yes, welcome.
Absolutely. It's good to have a full complement again. Happy to have you here.
Not alone anymore in my district.
Yeah. Anybody else for the good of the order? Okay, well, having no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Almost on time.
I know that was a slog, but we didn't punt on a single one of those.
It's fantastic.